Airport security footage never showed what really happened near Gate 47. That afternoon, a 34-year-old Mafia boss moved through the terminal completely unnoticed. He expected crowds, noise, strangers passing without meaning. Instead, he noticed a 20-year-old woman walking beside a man who kept a firm grip on her pace. Her neck was locked in a cervical orthopedic collar. A small cut marked the side of her face. She walked carefully, too carefully. As she passed him, she didn't stop. She didn't speak. She only lifted her hand for half a second and made a silent signal. No one else saw it. But he did. And in that instant, he knew the truth was far worse than it appeared. Grayson Wolfe didn't believe in coincidences. He believed in patterns, in the weight of a glance, in the space between words where truth lived and lies died. At 34, he had learned to read danger the way other men read newspapers, quickly, accurately, without emotion clouding judgment. The terminal at Chicago O'Hare hummed with its usual chaos. Families reuniting, business travelers checking watches, children crying, announcements echoing through spaces too large to feel human. Grayson moved through it all like smoke. Black jacket, simple watch, no jewelry, no flash, nothing that screamed wealth or power or the kind of influence that could make entire city blocks go quiet with a single phone call. To everyone around him, he was just another traveler, a businessman maybe, someone heading home after meetings that didn't matter. No one looked twice. That was exactly how he preferred it. He'd been in Detroit for 3 days, business that required his physical presence, the kind of negotiations where video calls and intermediaries weren't enough, where men needed to look each other in the eye and understand exactly what failure would cost. Now he was heading back to New York, back to the empire he'd built in shadows, back to the family that answered only to him. He sat in the gate area, laptop open but ignored. His attention wandered across faces, movements, the rhythm of the crowd. Old habits. Even here, miles from his territory, he couldn't stop himself from observing. From cataloging threats that probably didn't exist. From reading rooms the way some people read books. That's when he saw her. A young woman, early 20s maybe, pale skin, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that looked hastily done. She wore jeans and an oversized sweatshirt that swallowed her frame, and a rigid white cervical collar around her neck. She moved slowly, carefully, like someone who had learned that sudden movements brought consequences. A man walked beside her, tall, mid-40s, well-dressed in the way that suggested he spent money on looking trustworthy. Polo shirt, khaki pants, a leather bag slung over one shoulder. He kept one hand on her elbow, guiding her, or controlling her. Grayson's eyes narrowed. The man said something. The woman nodded. She didn't smile, didn't speak, just nodded with the mechanical precision of someone performing an expected response. They sat 3 rows away from Grayson. The man pulled out his phone, scrolled through emails with the casual distraction of someone comfortable in their surroundings. The woman sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on nothing, her breathing so controlled it barely moved the fabric of her sweatshirt. Grayson watched the side of her face. A small cut ran along her left cheekbone. Recent. The kind of injury that came from impact, not accident. The edges were clean, healing, but still visible beneath a thin layer of concealer that didn't quite match her skin tone. She wore no makeup otherwise. Her nails were short, unpainted, one thumbnail picked at the cuticle of her opposite hand. A nervous habit, unconscious, repetitive. The man glanced at her. She immediately stopped. Grayson felt something cold settle in his chest. Recognition, not of the woman, not of the man, but of the dynamic between them. He'd seen it before, in different forms, different contexts, different victims, the shape of fear disguised as compliance, the performance of normalcy over a foundation of terror. Most people in that terminal saw a father and daughter, maybe an uncle and niece, a caretaker helping someone recently injured. That's what it was supposed to look like. That's what made it perfect, because monsters didn't wear signs. They wore polo shirts and patient smiles and the kind of practiced concern that made strangers look away, satisfied that everything was exactly as it should be. But Grayson Wolfe had spent 15 years learning to see past surfaces, and what he saw now made his jaw tighten. The boarding announcement crackled through the speakers. Flight 2847 to LaGuardia, now boarding Group 1. The man stood, gestured to the woman. She rose immediately, fluidly, like someone accustomed to following commands without hesitation. They joined the line. Grayson remained seated. He told himself it wasn't his concern. This wasn't his city. These weren't his people. He had no jurisdiction here, no responsibility. The smart move was to board his flight and forget what he'd seen. But smart had never been the same as right. He watched them move through the line. The man presented both boarding passes. The gate agent smiled, scanned them, nodded them through. Completely routine. Grayson stood, grabbed his bag, and got in line 6 people behind them. The flight was half empty, middle of the day, middle of the week, the kind of flight that attracted business travelers and people visiting family, who couldn't afford peak prices. Grayson's seat was in first class. Row 3, window. The woman and the man were in economy. Row 17. He saw them as he boarded. She sat by the window. He took the aisle. The middle seat remained empty. Before takeoff, the man stood, walked to the bathroom, left the woman alone for the first time since Grayson had seen them. Grayson didn't hesitate. He moved down the aisle. Casual, like he was checking the overhead bins for his own luggage. As he passed row 17, he glanced down. The woman stared out the window. Her reflection showed in the glass. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted, like someone who had cried recently but couldn't afford to cry again. Grayson stopped. "Excuse me," he said quietly. She turned, startled. Her hand immediately went to the collar around her neck, a protective gesture, instinctive. "I'm sorry to bother you," Grayson continued, his voice deliberately gentle. "I noticed your injury. Are you all right? Do you need anything?" For just a second, something flickered in her eyes. Hope. Or maybe recognition that someone had actually looked at her, really looked. Then it died. She shook her head. "I'm fine, thank you." Her voice was soft, practiced, the kind of answer that had been rehearsed until it sounded natural. "The man you're with," Grayson said carefully. "Is he—" "My uncle." The response came too quickly, too smooth. "He's helping me get home after a car accident. I'm fine, really." Grayson studied her face. She held his gaze, steady, convincing, almost. But her left hand, hidden below the armrest, where the man wouldn't see when he returned, trembled against her thigh. "All right," Grayson said. He smiled, polite, unthreatening. "I hope you feel better soon." He turned to walk away. That's when it happened. Her hand lifted, just slightly, just for half a second, palm flat, thumb tucked, forefingers extended, and pressed together, then lowered immediately back to her lap. The signal. Grayson's blood went cold. He knew that gesture. It had been created years ago. Spread through social media, designed as a silent way for people in danger to ask for help without their abuser knowing. A last resort. A plea that said, "I need help, and I cannot speak." He kept walking, didn't react, didn't turn back. But his mind was already racing. The man returned to his seat 30 seconds later. Grayson sat in first class, staring at the seat back in front of him. He could call the flight attendant, report a suspicion. But what would he say? That a woman denied being in danger? That her uncle seemed controlling? That she made a hand gesture that might mean something or might mean nothing? Airport security would ask questions. The man would have answers. Identification, boarding passes. A story that held together under scrutiny. And the woman would deny everything. She'd already proven that. Because that's what victims did when their abuser was within earshot. When escape felt impossible. When the consequences of speaking were worse than the situation they were already in. Grayson knew this. Not from theory, from memory. 7 years ago, Grayson had failed someone. Her name was Isabella, 22 years old, working in one of his legitimate businesses, a restaurant his family owned in Brooklyn. She'd come to work with bruises, explanations that didn't quite fit. A boyfriend who picked her up every night and watched through the window while she closed out her register. Grayson had noticed. He'd asked if she needed help. She'd said no. Said everything was fine. Said her boyfriend was just protective because he loved her. Grayson had believed her. Or maybe he'd just wanted to believe her because it was easier than getting involved in something messy and complicated and outside the clean boundaries of his criminal empire. 3 weeks later, she was dead. Her boyfriend had beaten her to death in their apartment. Neighbors had heard screaming. No one called the police until it was too late. Grayson had gone to her funeral, had paid for it actually. Anonymous donation. It didn't matter. She was still dead. And he'd known, he'd seen the signs. He'd asked the question, and when she'd lied to protect herself, he'd accepted the lie because it was convenient. He'd sworn after that day that he would never make the same mistake twice. That if he ever saw the signs again, he wouldn't wait for permission to act. He would trust what he saw over what he was told. The plane leveled off at cruising altitude. Grayson unbuckled his seatbelt. Walked to the bathroom. On the way back, he paused at row 17. The man was asleep. Or pretending to be. His head tilted back against the headrest. His breathing deep and even. The woman stared out the window again. Grayson crouched slightly, brought himself to her eye level. "I saw it," he whispered. She turned. Confusion crossed her face. "The signal," Grayson said quietly. "I saw it, and I need you to understand something. When we land, I'm not walking away. I don't care what he's told you. I don't care what you think you have to say to protect yourself. I'm going to help you, but I need to know what I'm dealing with." Her eyes widened. Fear. Panic. "He's not your uncle, is he?" Grayson asked. She glanced at the man, still sleeping, still unaware. When she looked back at Grayson, tears balanced on her lower lashes. She shook her head. Once. Barely perceptible, but enough. "What's your name?" Grayson whispered. "Adeline." She breathed. The word barely made sound. "How long have you been with him?" 3 months. "Is he taking you somewhere you don't want to go?" She nodded. "Does he have your identification, your phone?" Another nod. "Has he hurt you?" Her hand went to the collar, to the cut on her face. She didn't answer with words. She didn't need to. "Okay," Grayson said. His voice was steady, calm. The same tone he used when negotiating with men who held guns and bad intentions. "When we land, stay close to him. Don't do anything different. Don't let him suspect anything changed. Can you do that?" "He'll know," Adeline whispered. "He always knows when something's wrong." "Then make sure nothing seems wrong," Grayson said. "You've been doing that for 3 months. You can do it for 2 more hours." A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it quickly, checked the man again, still sleeping. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Grayson met her eyes. "Because someone should have helped you a long time ago," he said. "And because I let someone down once, I won't do it again." He stood, walked back to his seat, and began making phone calls. LaGuardia Airport at 4 in the afternoon was controlled chaos. Grayson deplaned first. Stood near the gate. Watched passengers file out. The man emerged with Adeline close beside him. His hand on her lower back. Steering her through the crowd. Grayson followed at a distance. He'd made 3 calls during the flight, all brief, all coded, all to people who understood that when Grayson Wolfe asked for something, it wasn't a request. Now those pieces were moving into position. The man and Adeline walked toward baggage claim. Grayson hung back, observed. The man was confident, relaxed. He checked his phone, typed a message, laughed at something on his screen. Adeline walked beside him like a shadow. Present, but not really there. They collected 1 bag. Just one. A large black suitcase that the man handled himself. Then they headed toward ground transportation. Grayson followed. Outside, the afternoon sun cut sharp angles across the pavement. Cars honked. Taxis jockeyed for position. People shouted into phones and dragged luggage and searched for rideshare vehicles. The man led Adeline toward the taxi line. That's when Grayson's phone buzzed. A text from Wyatt, one of his most trusted men. In position. Black SUV. Second in taxi queue. Grayson typed back. "Wait for my signal." He watched the man and Adeline get into a yellow cab, regular city taxi, nothing unusual. The driver pulled away from the curb. Wyatt's SUV followed, and Grayson got into the vehicle that had been waiting for him since before the plane landed. A dark sedan, tinted windows, driver who asked no questions. "Follow the SUV," Grayson said. The driver nodded, and they disappeared into New York traffic. The taxi drove for 23 minutes. Through Queens, past neighborhoods that gradually shifted from commercial to residential. From crowded to quiet. From watched to forgotten. The taxi stopped in front of a narrow house on a street that had seen better decades. Paint peeling. Chain link fence. Small yard overgrown with weeds. The kind of place no one paid attention to. Perfect for someone who wanted to stay invisible. The man paid the driver, got out, pulled Adeline out behind him, retrieved the suitcase from the trunk. They walked up 3 cracked concrete steps. The man unlocked the door. They went inside. Wyatt's SUV parked 2 houses down. Grayson's sedan pulled up beside it. Grayson got out, joined Wyatt in the SUV. "How many ways in?" Grayson asked. "Front door, back door through the kitchen, 2 first-floor windows, 3 second floor." Wyatt was efficient, thorough. He'd been doing this work for 12 years. "No alarm system I can see. Locks are standard residential, nothing reinforced." "Neighbors?" "Left side is empty. For sale sign out front. Right side is an elderly couple, probably deaf, and don't care. Across the street is a rental, multiple families. Nobody's going to call the police about anything short of gunfire." Grayson nodded. "Who is he?" Wyatt handed over a tablet. A file was already open. Photo, details, background. "Ronan Vance, 43, no criminal record, works in insurance claims, lives in Ohio, divorced, 1 daughter, age 17, living with the ex-wife." Grayson scrolled through the file. "Joined several online groups in the past year." Wyatt continued. "Forums about traditional relationships. Communities where men share strategies for finding compliant partners. Specifically targets young women from difficult backgrounds. Offers help, housing, support. Then isolates them." "How did he get Adeline?" Grayson asked. "She was couch surfing in Cleveland, posted on social media about needing a place to stay after aging out of foster care. He saw the post, messaged her, offered her a room, no strings attached, he said." Grayson's jaw tightened. "How long before the strings appeared?" "Less than a week," Wyatt said quietly. "We tracked his phone, messaged his buddies online, bragged about having her trained within 10 days. The caller isn't from a car accident. He choked her 2 weeks ago when she tried to use a phone he didn't know she had." Silence filled the SUV. Cold. Heavy. The kind of silence that came before violence. "Where's he taking her?" Grayson asked. "He just bought a property in upstate New York, middle of nowhere, no neighbors for miles. Told her he's moving them somewhere safe, where they can start a real life together. She'll never be seen again." Grayson looked at the house, thought about Adeline sitting inside right now, probably scared, probably wondering if the man on the plane had meant what he said, or if she was about to face consequences for making that signal. "How many men do we have?" Grayson asked. 4, plus us." "Call them in. I want this house surrounded in the next 10 minutes. No one goes in until I say. No one comes out unless I approve it. Understood?" "Understood." Grayson sat in the SUV and made one more call. To a woman named Claire, who ran a nonprofit Grayson quietly funded. An organization that specialized in extracting domestic violence victims from situations where traditional law enforcement either couldn't or wouldn't help. "I need a placement," Grayson said when Claire answered. "Tonight, young woman, early 20s, no family, no resources, severe trauma. She's going to need medical care, legal support, and a safe place to stay while she figures out her next move." "How severe are we talking?" Claire's voice was steady, professional. She'd done this work for 15 years. Nothing shocked her anymore. "Strangulation injury, facial trauma, probable psychological abuse. He had full control of her identification and communication. She's been isolated for months." Claire was silent for a moment, then. "I have a bed, private facility, upstate, medical staff on site, trauma counselors, legal team. She can stay as long as she needs, no cost, no questions." "Good," Grayson said. "I'll have her there by midnight." "Grayson," Claire said carefully, "is this going to be a situation I need to prepare for legally?" "Everything will be handled through proper channels," Grayson said, which wasn't exactly an answer. "That's not what I asked." Grayson smiled without humor. "Ronan Vance is going to have a very bad night, but he's going to survive it. And when it's over, he's going to have some choices to make about his future. I suspect he'll make the smart ones." "Will there be evidence?" Claire asked. "Of what?" "Grayson." "Claire." She sighed. Fine. I'll have the room ready. Send her with an escort, someone she can trust." "Already arranged." Grayson paused. "Thank you." Just bring her home, Claire said, and hung up. Inside the house, Adeline sat on a worn couch that smelled like mildew and years of neglect. Ronan moved through the rooms, checking locks, closing curtains, turning on lights. "We'll stay here tonight," he said. His voice carried that false warmth, the performance of kindness. "Rest up. Then tomorrow morning we drive north, our new place. You're going to love it, Adeline. It's quiet, private, just us, no distractions." Adeline nodded. She'd learned in 3 months that agreeing was safer than questioning, that compliance bought time, that Ronan's patience was a thin membrane stretched over rage that could rupture with the slightest pressure. He sat beside her, ran his hand along her arm. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. Another lesson learned. "You did good today," Ronan said. "On the plane, very calm, very natural. I'm proud of you." "Thank you," Adeline whispered. "See, this is how it should be. When you listen to me, everything works. When you fight me." His hand moved to her collar, applied the smallest amount of pressure, a reminder. Things get difficult. Adeline closed her eyes, tried to remember what the man on the plane had looked like, his voice, his promise. "When we land, I'm not walking away." But they'd landed hours ago, and she was still here, still trapped, still pretending that this was a life worth living. "I'm going to make us dinner," Ronan said. He stood, kissed the top of her head. "You stay here. Rest. Don't go near the windows." He walked into the kitchen. Adeline heard him opening cabinets, running water, the clang of pots. She sat perfectly still and wondered if hope was worse than hopelessness. At least hopelessness was honest. Outside, darkness fell. Grayson's men moved into position. One at the back door, one at each side of the house. Wyatt and Grayson at the front. They didn't wear masks, didn't hide their faces. This wasn't a robbery. This was something else entirely. At 7:45, Grayson's phone buzzed. A text from the man watching the back. "He's in the kitchen. She's in the living room, alone." Grayson looked at Wyatt. "Time to knock." They walked up the steps. Grayson rang the doorbell, waited. Heard footsteps inside. Ronan's voice. "Who is it?" "Delivery," Grayson called out. The footsteps paused. "I didn't order anything," Ronan said through the door. "Package for this address. Needs a signature." Silence. Then the sound of locks turning. The door opened. Ronan stood there, confused, suspicious, his hand still on the doorknob. He looked at Grayson. Recognition flickered in his eyes. From the plane. The man who'd stopped to talk to Adeline. His expression changed. Alarm. He tried to close the door. Grayson's hand shot out, caught the edge, held it open. "We need to talk," Grayson said quietly. "Get out of here," Ronan hissed. "This is private property. I'll call the police." "Go ahead," Grayson said. "I'd love to explain to them why you have a 20-year-old woman with strangulation injuries locked in your house while you're planning to drive her to an isolated property tomorrow morning." Ronan's face went pale. "How did you?" "It doesn't matter how I know," Grayson said. "What matters is what happens next, and you get to make a choice." Ronan tried to push the door closed. Wyatt stepped forward. His shoulder hit the door. It swung open hard enough to knock Ronan back. 3 steps. Grayson walked inside. Wyatt followed. The door closed behind them. Adeline heard voices in the entryway. Ronan's, angry, scared, and another voice. Calm, familiar. She stood from the couch, walked to the living room entrance, saw the man from the plane standing in the hallway. Another man beside him, larger, dangerous looking. Ronan backed against the wall. "You can't just break into someone's home," Ronan said. His voice cracked. "This is illegal. You'll what?" Grayson asked. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. "Call the police, please. Do it. Let's see how that conversation goes." Ronan's eyes darted to Adeline. She stood frozen. Grayson looked at her. His expression softened immediately. "Adeline," he said gently. "Are you hurt? Right now, are you hurt?" She shook her head. "Good," Grayson said. "I need you to do something for me. I need you to go upstairs, find a room with a door that locks, go inside, lock it, and don't come out until I personally tell you it's safe. Can you do that?" Adeline looked at Ronan. His face had gone from pale to red. Fury building. The kind of rage she'd seen before. "You don't tell her what to do," Ronan said. "She's mine. She stays here. She's not yours," Grayson said, each word precise, cold. "She's never been yours. She's a human being you manipulated and abused, and that ends tonight." "Adeline," Ronan snapped, "get over here, now." Adeline didn't move. For the first time in 3 months, she didn't obey an order from Ronan Vance. Grayson saw the shift in her posture, the tiny spark of defiance. "Upstairs," he said again. "Lock the door." Adeline walked to the stairs. Ronan lunged toward her. Wyatt stepped between them. His hand landed on Ronan's chest, pushed him back against the wall with enough force to knock the air from his lungs. "Don't," Wyatt said quietly. Adeline ran upstairs. Grayson heard a door close, a lock turn. Good. He turned his full attention to Ronan. "Here's what's going to happen," Grayson said. He walked further into the living room, looked around, saw the signs everywhere. No personal items belonging to Adeline. No photos, no belongings except what Ronan allowed. A prison disguised as a home. "You're going to sit down," Grayson continued. "You're going to listen, and you're going to make the smartest decision of your miserable life." "I don't have to listen to anything," Ronan said, but his voice shook. "You have no authority here." Grayson smiled. "Authority is an interesting word. See, you're right, I'm not a police officer, not FBI, not any kind of law enforcement. I don't have a badge or a warrant or any legal standing whatsoever." He sat in the chair across from the couch, gestured for Ronan to sit. Ronan didn't move. Wyatt took a step forward. Ronan sat. "But here's the thing about authority," Grayson said. "Sometimes it has nothing to do with laws or badges. Sometimes authority is just the understanding between two people about who has power and who doesn't. And right now, in this room, I have all of it. You have none." "What do you want?" Ronan whispered. "I want you to understand your situation," Grayson said. "Right now, I know everything about you. Where you work, where you bank, your daughter's school schedule, your ex-wife's address, the online forums where you brag about abusing vulnerable women, the posts where you give advice to other predators about how to isolate victims." Ronan's eyes widened. "All of that information," Grayson continued, "is currently sitting in a folder on my phone. One button push, and it goes to law enforcement. Another button, and it goes to every person in your life. Your employer, your ex-wife, your daughter's school, the neighborhood watch, and whatever community you thought you were going to disappear to." "You're bluffing," Ronan said. Grayson pulled out his phone, opened a file, turned the screen toward Ronan. Screenshots of forum posts. Messages to other men, photos Ronan had taken of Adeline without her knowledge. Evidence of intent, of planning, of systematic abuse. Ronan's face crumbled. "I have witnesses who will testify that Adeline was coerced," Grayson said. "Medical experts who will examine her injuries and provide detailed reports. Forensic analysts who will tear apart your electronics and find every deleted message, every cleared browser history, every attempt to hide what you are." He leaned forward. "Or," Grayson said, "we do this another way." "What way?" Ronan's voice was barely audible. "You give me Adeline's identification, her social security card, any documents you took from her. You sign a statement saying she came here of her own free will and is leaving of her own free will. You provide the passwords to any accounts you made her create. You delete every photo, every video, every piece of information you have about her." Grayson's eyes went cold. "And then you never speak. Her name again. You never search for her. You never try to contact her. You forget she exists. And in return, I don't destroy your entire life. I don't send this evidence to the police. I don't tell your daughter what kind of man her father really is." Silence. Ronan sat there, trembling, his whole world collapsing. "How do I know you won't send that information anyway?" he finally asked. "You don't," Grayson said simply. "You just have to trust that I'm a man of my word, and that as long as you stay far away from Adeline and every other vulnerable woman you were planning to victimize, your secret stays buried." "And if I say no?" Ronan asked. Grayson stood. "Then we move to Plan B," he said, "which involves a lot more pain for you and a lot less mercy from me. I've been polite so far, Ronan. I've used words, but I employ men who specialize in other forms of persuasion, Men who are waiting outside right now. Men who would consider it a privilege to spend time explaining to you why predators don't get to walk away without consequences. Wyatt cracked his knuckles. Ronan flinched. So, what's it going to be? Grayson asked. The smart choice, or the one that ends with you learning exactly how much pain a human body can endure before it breaks? 20 minutes later, Grayson had everything. Adeline's driver's license, her birth certificate, her social security card, all the documents Ronan had used to control her movement and identity. He'd also witnessed Ronan deleting every file related to Adeline, every photo, every message, and he'd recorded Ronan signing a statement confirming Adeline had been a guest in his home and was leaving voluntarily. It wouldn't hold up in court, but it didn't need to. It just needed to exist as insurance. One more thing, Grayson said. Ronan looked up. Defeated. Broken. You're going to check yourself into therapy, Grayson said. A specific therapist. One who specializes in working with men who have your particular problem. You'll attend sessions 3 times a week, for 2 years minimum, and every month I'll receive a report on your progress. And if I stop going, Ronan asked, then all that evidence I have goes public, Grayson said, and whatever life you've managed to salvage disappears. Ronan nodded slowly. Good, Grayson said. Wyatt, get him out of here. Take him to a hotel. Make sure he stays there tonight. Tomorrow he flies back to Ohio, without making any detours. Wyatt pulled Ronan to his feet, led him toward the door. Before they left, Grayson called out, Ronan. Ronan turned. If I ever hear your name associated with another woman, another victim, another attempt to do what you did to Adeline, Grayson let the sentence hang. There won't be a second conversation. Do you understand? Ronan nodded. Say it, Grayson ordered. I understand, Ronan whispered. Good. Wyatt took him outside. The door closed. Grayson stood alone in the silent house. He pulled out his phone, sent a text. She's safe, you can come down. A minute later, Adeline appeared at the top of the stairs. She descended slowly, still wearing the collar, still carrying the weight of 3 months in her movements. When she reached the bottom, she looked at Grayson. Is he gone? She asked. He's gone, Grayson confirmed, and he's never coming back. Adeline's legs gave out. She sat on the bottom step, put her face in her hands, and cried. Grayson sat beside her, didn't touch her, didn't speak, just sat, and let her cry. Sometimes the kindest thing you could do for someone was give them permission to fall apart. When the sobs finally slowed, Adeline wiped her face with her sleeve. I don't understand, she said. Her voice was raw. Why would you do this? You don't know me. I don't need to know you deserve better than what he did to you, Grayson said. But you risked. She gestured vaguely. Everything, for someone you saw on a plane. Grayson was quiet for a moment. 7 years ago, he finally said. I knew a young woman who was in a situation like yours. I saw the signs. I asked if she needed help. She said no, and I believed her because it was easier than getting involved. He looked at Adeline. 3 weeks later, she was dead, he said. Killed by the man who was supposed to love her, and I've carried that with me every day since. So when I saw you make that signal, I knew I had a choice. I could walk away and spend the rest of my life wondering if you ended up like Isabella, or I could do what I should have done 7 years ago. Adeline stared at him. Who are you? She whispered. Grayson smiled slightly. Someone who believes that power should be used to protect people, not control them. That's not really an answer. It's the only answer that matters right now. Adeline looked around the house. What happens to me now? She asked. I don't have anywhere to go. No family, no money. Ronan took everything. No, he didn't, Grayson said. He took things you can get back, identification, documents. Those are replaceable. What he couldn't take is whatever made you strong enough to survive 3 months with him. Whatever made you learn that signal and wait for the exact right moment to use it. That's yours. And it always was. He stood, offered his hand. I know someone, Grayson said. Someone who helps people in situations like yours. She has a place, safe, private, with doctors and counselors and people who understand what you've been through. You can stay there as long as you need. No cost, no expectations, just time to heal. Adeline looked at his hand. And after that, she asked. After that, you decide, Grayson said. What you want to do, where you want to go, who you want to become, that's all you. But you'll have support, resources, people who actually care about what happens to you. Adeline took his hand, stood. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. The signal. You knew what it meant. How? Grayson helped her into her coat, the only piece of clothing in the house that actually belonged to her. I make it my business to know things that might save someone's life, he said. Sometimes it's information about enemies, sometimes it's about allies, and sometimes it's about strangers on a plane who need someone to see them. He opened the front door. A car waited at the curb. Not the SUV, a different vehicle. Comfortable. Unmarked. A woman stood beside it. Adeline, Grayson said. This is Sarah. She works with Claire. She's going to drive you upstate. To the facility I mentioned. She'll stay with you tonight. Make sure you get settled. Answer any questions. Sarah smiled. Warm, genuine. The kind of smile that said, I've been where you are, and I understand. Hi, Adeline, Sarah said. Ready to get out of here? Adeline looked back at the house, at the prison that had pretended to be a home, then at Grayson. Thank you, she said, her voice stronger now, steadier. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You don't repay it, Grayson said. You just live. Really live. And maybe someday, if you see someone else who needs help, you remember what it felt like to have someone notice, and you do for them what I did for you. Adeline nodded, walked to the car. Sarah opened the door. Before getting in, Adeline turned one more time. What's your name? She asked. Your real name? Grayson smiled. Does it matter? It does to me. Grayson, he said. Grayson Wolfe. Thank you, Grayson Wolfe, Adeline said, for seeing me when everyone else looked away. She got in the car. Sarah closed the door. The vehicle pulled away from the curb. Grayson watched until the taillights disappeared around a corner. Then he pulled out his phone, made one final call. It's done, he said when Wyatt answered. Vance is at the hotel, guarded. He won't move until morning. Good. Make sure he gets on that flight. Then, I want eyes on him for the next 6 months. Any deviation from the plan, any attempt to contact Adeline or anyone like her, I want to know immediately. Understood. And the house? Grayson looked at the building behind him. Burn it, he said. Literally? No, Grayson said. But I want it gutted. Every piece of furniture, every fixture, every trace of what happened here. Donate whatever's salvageable. Destroy the rest. Then put the property on the market. Whatever profit comes from the sale goes to Claire's nonprofit, anonymously. You're a complicated man, boss, Wyatt said. I'm a practical man, Grayson corrected. Letting buildings stand as monuments to suffering is wasteful. Better to erase it. Give the space a chance to become something else. Fair enough. You heading home? Grayson looked at his watch. 9:30. He'd started this day in Detroit. Ended it in Queens. In between, he'd saved someone's life. Not with violence, not with the tools he usually used, just with attention and the willingness to act when action was necessary. Yeah, Grayson said. I'm heading home. 3 months later, Grayson received a letter. It came through Claire's nonprofit. No return address, just a first name signed at the bottom. Adeline. He opened it in his office. Late afternoon, sun slanting through the windows of a building he owned in Manhattan. Far from airports and strangers and moments that change everything. The letter was short. Dear Grayson, I'm writing this from a small apartment in Vermont. It's mine. Actually mine. I signed the lease myself, paid the deposit with money I earned from a job I got through Claire's network. I'm working at a bookstore. It's quiet, simple, exactly what I need right now. I had the collar removed last month. Medically, I'm healing. Emotionally, I'm working on it. Therapy helps, some days more than others. But I wanted you to know something. I'm alive, not just surviving, actually living. I wake up in the morning and make my own choices. I walk to work without looking over my shoulder. I laugh with my coworkers. I'm learning to trust again, slowly, but I'm learning. None of that would be possible if you hadn't seen me, really seen me, on that plane, in that moment. You asked me a question once. You asked why I made the signal if I didn't think anyone would recognize it. The truth is, I didn't think anyone would. I made it because I needed to believe that somewhere in the world, someone still cared enough to look for signs of suffering, even if that someone was never coming. But you did come, and you saved my life. I know you probably don't think of it that way. You probably saw it as just doing what needed to be done. But to me, you are the reason I'm sitting in this apartment right now, writing this letter, planning a future that actually feels possible. So thank you for seeing, for acting, for proving that there are still people in this world who choose to help instead of look away. I don't know if I'll ever see you again. Maybe that's not how this works. But I wanted you to know that you didn't fail someone this time. You saved them, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure that choice you made mattered. With gratitude, Adeline Grayson set the letter down, looked out the window at the city below. Millions of people, all living lives he'd never know about, all carrying burdens he'd never see. But somewhere in Vermont, one of them was alive, because he'd paid attention, because he trusted what he saw over what he was told, because he'd refused to let convenience override conscience. That wasn't redemption. Not really. Redemption would be bringing Isabella back, but it was something, a small piece of balance in a world that tilted too often toward cruelty. Grayson folded the letter carefully, put it in his desk drawer, locked it, and went back to work. 2 years after that day in the airport, Grayson was in Boston, business meeting, quick trip, in and out. He was walking through Faneuil Hall, crowds of tourists, street performers, the smell of food from a dozen restaurants. He heard someone call his name, turned. A young woman stood there, mid-20s now, hair longer, confidence in her posture, a smile on her face. Adeline. I thought that was you, she said. Grayson smiled. Adeline, you look well. I am well, she said. Really well. I'm in Boston for a conference. I work for a nonprofit now, teaching self-defense classes to survivors of domestic violence. That's incredible, Grayson said. It feels right, Adeline said, helping others the way I was helped. They stood there for a moment, the city moving around them, two people whose lives had intersected for the briefest moment and changed trajectories forever. I got your letter, Grayson said. I never responded. I wasn't sure. You didn't need to, Adeline interrupted. I didn't write it, expecting a response. I just needed you to know that I'm okay. I'm glad, Grayson said, and meant it. Adeline glanced at her watch. I have to get to my next session, Ia said, but I'm really glad I ran into you. So am I. She started to walk away, then stopped, turned back. Grayson, she said, the signal, I still teach it. In every class. Because you never know who might need it, who might be paying attention. Grayson nodded. The world needs more people who pay attention, he said. Adeline smiled. Be one of them, she said, and walked away into the crowd. Grayson watched her go, then continued through the hall. Later that evening, on his flight back to New York, he thought about how many people he'd passed that day. How many stories he'd never know, how many signals he might have missed. He couldn't save everyone, he couldn't even see everyone, but he could stay vigilant. He could keep noticing, and maybe, if he was lucky, he'd see the next person who needed someone to pay attention at exactly the right moment, because in the end, that's all it took, attention and the willingness to act on what you saw. Everything else was just details.